H2O AI Hybrid Cloud is an end-to-end platform that enables organizations to rapidly make world-class AI models and applications for virtually any use case. Building AI models used to take large teams of expert data scientists months or even years. With H2O AI Hybrid Cloud, an individual data engineer, developer, or data scientist can make world-class AI models and applications many times faster, rapidly putting AI into the hands of business users. H2O AI Hybrid Cloud brings automation capabilities across the entire data science lifecycle, including connecting to and preparing data, building and explaining models, and deploying and operating them. The platform also makes it easy to publish and share AI applications across an entire organization. H2O AI Hybrid Cloud runs on Kubernetes, allowing customers to operate on any cloud or on-premise infrastructure. If you're looking for a solution that enables you to put AI into the hands of every employee, get started with H2O AI Hybrid Cloud. One platform, thousands of use cases.
Igor? Oh, we start. Hi, good evening. My name is Marco Lauria, and it's a pleasure to be with you today here. This is the last of the day, the last part of the day of the AI experience, the biggest event we have in artificial intelligence in Brazil. I'm going to share my screen here in just 1 minute. You can probably now see my screen. This is an event that is happening the whole week. Today is the 3rd day of the event. And we have simultaneous translation in one channel. If you are watching this through YouTube, you probably have the link. One of them have translation to Portuguese, and you can watch, we can also watch the original in English if you prefer. But we have 2 transmissions, simultaneous transmissions live, one being translated and the other one in the original audio in English. A few comments here before we get to our speaker. We have a link, and you can see here the short link to the site. If you want to do your check-in, you don't need to do this multiple times in the day, just once a day. It's going to register your participation during the day, and you're going to get a certificate in about 2 weeks after the event. And if you do your check-in, you'll also be participating in a drawing that will happen at the end of the day today. So you get a certificate, and you also get, there's going to be a drawing from one of our sponsors today. It's a gift from Semantics. You're going to have a nice cap, a backpack. So it's a prize for you besides the certificate that you get. A few things. Who we are? Who is I3A? I3A is a non-profit association. We are here to promote the use of artificial intelligence in Brazil, and we believe that it's imperative for the country to participate in this what we call the 4th wave, and it's fundamental for the country to be part of this wave. It's the opportunity we have to remain competitive in the world, and the countries who not embrace this strategy are going to be behind. So it's very important to take part of this 4th generation, 4th industrial revolution that we are having, and we are glad that we are part of the group that is working on the Brazilian strategy for artificial intelligence. I2AI was appointed to be part of the committee for the EBIA, the Estratégia Brasileira de Inteligência Artificial, and we are also part of a group from Embrapa and MCT, a committee from Embrapa and MCTI that is fostering the development of artificial intelligence with some funds to develop some products. So there's 2 important initiatives that we are part of, and we are going to hear more about the Canadian strategy and what's happening in Canada in the presentation later today. I3AI is at the center of this complex ecosystem. We try to connect these multiple parties. There is business enterprises from all sizes, small, medium, large enterprise. We have research institutions, we have startups, we have technology companies, venture capitalists, and people who wants to invest on the country. We have universities and academia, we have the government. So we try to connect here the multiple stakeholders on this ecosystem. We try to match the demand with the offerings we have. So it's a key player working to connect these multiple parties on the ecosystem. A few things we do. It goes from executive education. We have training available for managers, for executives, for C-level persons. We have been working on a strategy for digital transformation, and there's a lot of artificial intelligence behind the digital transformation. So it's one of the areas we've been working on. We can develop experience. We have even a chance of doing a customized experience. If a company wants to do a workshop, wants to debate about artificial intelligence, wants to evaluate a few possibilities, we can do it. We can even do a customized event. We are doing some research, and we are also helping connect the academia with the enterprise and with the public in general. We develop content. We help bring content developed by other parties to the general public through events like this, through some publication, through blogs, through some ebooks that you can download. So there's a number of things we do to try to promote the artificial intelligence in Brazil. This is the team. We have Alexandre as the CEO. Many of you know probably Romera, Andressa, Fernando Domingues, Thiago. This is the team that is with you all this week. We have different hosts every day. It is a team that is very passionate about it. And we also have an extended team with people that is known by his knowledge on the field. And it's people from all different backgrounds here. From Marcelo Taz, we have engineers, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have all sort of different profile here that makes a very diverse team. And we debate many of these topics. As an associate, you can participate in 101 with several of this extended team. So it's a pleasure to be part of this extended team as well. And it's a good opportunity for every associate to be a part of the discussion. We also have committees. I'm the responsible for the innovation committee here. It's one of the first ones, and we have more than 50 participants, but we also have a privacy and ethics and governance committee. Fernando leads that. We have education committee, and these three committees are working together in the Brazilian strategy with propositions for the Brazilian strategy. We have some vertical committees like health, retail. We have a machine learning committee. We have an international committee. So there is many opportunities to join discussion with the team. Most of them meet on a bi-weekly basis for an hour or two to discuss some important topics. If you are interested in knowing more about AI, besides the videos we have recorded for all the events on YouTube, we have developed this glossary of terms where more than 30 terms are explained in a short video. This was a work done by the extended team, and it's typically short videos, 4 to 8 minutes, where you can learn about these topics. As I mentioned, you also have some ebooks you can download. There is one in Demystifying the Machine Learning. It's a work from the Machine Learning Committee. And there was a book we launched last year with the Innovation Committee. It's how to implement AI in your enterprise. I'm honored to be part of this initiative and even wrote some chapters of this book. But you can access the site and you can download the ebooks for free. It's good material if you want to learn more about AI. So these are many of the benefits you have in associating with AI. It's a very reasonable fee for what you're going to have access to a lot of content. I would like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible today. We have H2O, Suzano, Semantics, EducaCross, and FIA ProInfo, who helped us to make this event possible. And with no further ado, I would like to introduce Brent Barrow, who is joining us from Canada here. It's an important research institute from Canada, focused on artificial intelligence. And he's going to be talking about AI changing how we work and live experience from Canada. So with this, I pass it to you, Brent. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and then it's with you, Brent. We can see you.
Thank you very much. And I do also want to say that's an incredible both quantity and quality of work that you're doing with a very lean team. That's really, really impressive.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you so much.
So let me just bring up my slides here. So I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the experiences that we've had in Canada. I'll briefly go over what CIFAR is, the organization that I represent, and why we're part of Canada's AI story. Then we're going to look at a few Canadian examples of the big changes that AI is able to bring in both industrial and social applications. I'll talk a bit about where Canada's path forward is, and then we should have time for some questions. I do recognize that I am the last speaker and the one keeping you from whatever you are planning to do after this, so I will try to be as brief as possible. So CIFAR is a nonprofit research institute that's headquartered in Canada, but we are animated by the philosophy that the biggest challenges facing the world and humanity require the world's best minds to come together. So while we're based in Canada, we establish a global research presence and bring together researchers from around the world. And these are all organized around some of the most important and challenging questions that humanity and the scientific community face. This ranges from, clean energy to concepts around group membership and belonging and nationalism and how we deal with in-groups and out-groups. We have work in quantum computing and quantum materials development. A lot of interesting stuff happening on the role of the microbiome, so all of the bacteria that live in your gut and on your skin, and the role that that plays, not just in sort of your health, but also in children's development, long-term trajectories of health, and even in terms of how societies evolve and interact with their microbial populations. So we're really interested in a vast array of science, and one of the things that we became involved in quite early on was artificial intelligence, which is why I'm here. Our commitments are, as I mentioned, to global collaboration and interdisciplinary research, and to giving great thinkers the time and the space to really trust one another and try out their big ideas that maybe aren't quite ready for the conference presentation, but you want to be able to talk to them with a trusted group of other brilliant researchers. And to that end, we've had 19 Nobel laureates that have been part of CIFAR since its inception. So that's we really are bringing together some of the best in the entire world. To give you an idea of what these research networks look like, they're focused on big transformative knowledge. So it's not about incremental progression in any area. They're 5-year terms, so it is quite a good period of time for the research community to come together, and those can be renewed. And they're groups of about 25 researchers from multiple disciplines. So why am I telling you all this? Because it becomes important in our history lesson that we are about to do. So this is a admittedly very CIFAR-centric timeline of the AI story in Canada. So we were created in 1982, and our very first program in 1983 was on artificial intelligence, robotics, and I think critically, and society. So it wasn't just about the technical applications. It was also about, what does this mean? What are the implications of this? And how do we get the technology people and the social people coming together to explore these issues? So that was really, in our DNA from day one. Jeff Hinton, who is, the godfather of modern AI. I suspect that is a familiar name to this audience. He was recruited to Canada, and we helped to do it. And that's a big part of why Canada ended up being a center of excellence for artificial intelligence. In 2004, when we were just sort of getting out of one of our AI winters, we launched a program led by Professor Hinton that basically brought forward this idea of computers that weren't programmed, but they could learn. And the theory of this program was the way that we're going to teach computers how to learn is by looking at how humans learn. So it wasn't just computer scientists working on this, it was also bringing in a lot of neuroscience perspectives that could kind of take lessons from the human brain, obviously with a lot of differences, but apply them to the concepts of machine learning. And then, the rest, the rest kind of goes from there. Jeff obviously created, backpropagation and deep neural nets, and launched a revolution in artificial intelligence. So we've kind of we've had three real superstars of AI in Canada. Obviously, Jeff, that I mentioned, as well as Joshua Bengio, who I suspect is also a very familiar name, as well as Richard Sutton, who is one of the major forces, if not the major driving force in the world on reinforcement learning, which is actually the approach that leads to a lot of the kind of more famous applications of AI in terms of beating humans at Go and game theory and things like that. So that's all work that's coming out of the approach that Richard really pioneered. And so because of, again, to a large extent, the real incredible world-class talent from those three researchers, Canada is now home to three major AI centers of excellence, one that's located in Toronto, one that's located in Montreal, and one that's located in Edmonton. And my friends at the embassy and the trade commissions and stuff would kill me if I didn't do a little Canada bragging. So we were the first country in the world to have a national AI strategy. We were fourth in the Global AI Index. In a lot of different talent rankings, Canada rates incredibly high. On average, we have the highest educated workforce in the world. And this is all in what is physically quite a large country, but population-wise, not so much. We're kind of 35 million-ish people. So we really do punch above our weight in science, but particularly in AI. So then we get to the question of what did we do with this? We had these incredible centers of research excellence. It's kind of 2016. We're seeing the importance of artificial intelligence in so many domains. So what does Canada do to capitalize on that? So in 2017, and I worked with the Canadian government in part to develop this, we launched, as I mentioned, the first national AI strategy. And what I found really interesting about Canada's approach to this is you can actually look at a comparison of different national AI strategies in a couple of publications that CIFAR has done. But our focus really was on developing the research ecosystem and recruiting and retaining research talent. So, these are the pillars of our initial AI strategy, which was $125 million Canadian. Perhaps I should have rechecked the conversion math in case the exchange rates have changed. But the bulk of the funding that Canada invested into the AI community, it wasn't in promoting adoption in businesses. It wasn't in getting new multinationals to move to Canada. It was getting people. And it was making sure that Canada was home to the very best AI researchers in the world, because they're the ones that drive everything forward. They're the ones that attract industry. I would say most importantly, they're the ones who are training the great younger research scientists who are either going on to do their own research, or who are also, working to implement these things in Canadian businesses and civil society. And it also established, as I mentioned, really cemented those three centers of excellence across the country. And we also did some work on, again, the societal implications of AI. So, what do all these changes mean for the world around us? Okay, so this is what we did as a country. And what has that led to? Well, we've actually, perhaps unsurprisingly, experienced brain gain. Canada, I think, as a lot of countries, has had a bit of a past history of training, brilliant students, and then they go to the U.S. And that was something that we were really trying to reverse, and particularly given the, Donald Trump's recent election and some of the immigration policies and other policies that were in place. There was a certain desire for top talent to no longer be in the US. And in a lot of cases, they were people who had trained in Canada, had gone to the United States. And so now we were sort of bringing them home to create this booming AI community. So, Canada's risen a lot in, AI talent flows, at least in North America. Toronto is, that shouldn't say Canada, that should say North America, is the fastest growing jurisdiction for tech talent. We're seeing new AI programs, both at the university level and sort of at the more training and college level. We've got, lots of collaboration between industry and academia, and we're seeing incredible growth in our STEM enrollment since 2015. And it's not just the talent. The theory of the strategy was, if you've got the talent, then other things will come from that. That's really an AI your starting point. And we have, in fact, seen that happening. Technology investment in Canada has traditionally not been as high as some of our other traditional industries, and we've seen an incredible increase in direct investment in the AI community and the technology community overall. Many of our markets, especially compared to the US, have a great cost advantage, both in terms of cost of living, cost of talent. So it's a really attractive position for businesses that are looking to situate. We've got hundreds and hundreds of partnerships between the newly established AI institutes and private companies. We've got 50 R&D labs that have been established in Canada. I think probably the most exciting one is, if you're familiar with DeepMind, which is now owned by Google, their first ever research facility that was set up outside of the UK was set up in Edmonton, which people are often surprised to hear. And then we also have some kind of larger scale academic industry collaborations that aren't quite as specific to AI, but that are very AI heavy in Quebec and British Columbia, which are two of our provinces. Canada's also played a role in responsible AI. So CIFAR had its work on the social implications of AI. We participated in our Government's Advisory Council, which was providing advice directly to the Minister of Industry on how to best roll out responsible AI. Canada has developed, I think, a quite sophisticated algorithmic assessment tool, which allows the Canadian government, if it's looking to implement an AI solution, to basically go through a series of questions to determine how much humans need to be involved in decision making, what's the significance of the effect on people's lives, how do you have to build the systems to ensure that it's fair and equitable. The Montreal Declaration for Responsible AI, which might also be familiar, obviously launched in Montreal. And then the new Global Partnership on AI, or GPAI, was launched as part of a Canada-France collaboration. Canada's very involved in the OECD principles, and the list sort of goes on and on. So it's not just, advancing the technology and advancing the industry, but also advancing how we do this responsibly as a society. So now I sort of want to highlight, okay, so what's changing? What is this all doing? So I want to go through a few examples that are coming out of the Canadian community that I think are really and truly exciting. So one of the challenges in a lot of industrial applications is materials. We as humans have an incredibly long history of creating different kinds of alloys and plastics and things like that. But it's not a very efficient process. In a lot of cases, we're discovering materials and then we're trying to figure out what they're good for, what we can do with them afterwards. And what some of this work is doing is looking to use artificial intelligence and a robotics platform to basically to do very smart trial and error to create new materials and new molecules based on the traits that we want them to have. So you could say that you want something that, has a certain electrical conductivity and a certain density and all of these properties. And it's a system that will work to design something using machine learning and then using automated testing of robotics, something that will meet your specifications. So this is, looking to accelerate by, an order of magnitude the rate at which humanity can discover these new materials. And if we can design materials for specific applications, we can make them more inexpensive, we can make them lighter, we can make them less environmentally harmful, and we can kind of have, customized materials for different applications and what we want to do with them. So I think this is a very exciting development, also in sort of democratizing chemistry and making these platforms that where you don't have to be, a multinational R&D lab to be able to create something new. Another area that I think is probably familiar, at least to some people, is work on precision agriculture. So there's a lot of different ways that this plays out using artificial intelligence. But it's using a combination of computer vision, again, robotics, as well as predictive AI modeling to do everything from identify which crops in a given row have pests on them and then need to be treated. It can look at identifying disease patterns, tracking specific livestock. There's examples in the US of using computer vision to track and maintain fish spawning in aquaculture. And so what this allows you to do is just to be that much more precise. So you're not spraying pesticides on an entire row of corn. You're only targeting the specific stalks that actually have pests on it. You're only targeting, specifically determined amounts of fertilizer to the exact plants that need it at the exact time. So, not only does this increase farm yields, but you can also see in some cases a drastic reduction in the amount of pesticide and fertilizer runoff that we have. And I would also say, as somebody who grew up around farms, it's not a lot of fun. Farming is not a great pile of joy, and I think opportunities to automate some of the the most intense and hardest working conditions in the agricultural sector is really a great opportunity. So now we're going to pivot a bit away from sort of some of the industrial applications that we've seen and towards more quality of life, health, societal implications. So this is an example that I love because it's incredibly effective and it's also very simple in its concept, although obviously not in its execution. And basically, this is an AI system that is, and it's actually implemented in general internal medicine units, and it uses existing electronic medical records and electronic charts to identify the risk factor that a patient will require ICU admission in the next 24 to 48 hours. And that's an incredibly hard thing for doctors to do. You know, a lot of it is decisions based on obviously years of experience, but on gut feel. And you know, it's unsurprisingly a major predictor of deaths. So this system has been proven it's about 20%-ish better than a physician's assessment, and has been close to that in terms of reducing overall mortality among patients. And I think what's a really interesting lesson in this example is it's not just creating the AI system, it's all of the work that they did to ensure that it works within the context of doctors and nurses' existing work and their existing practices and how they do things. Because if you try to tell doctors and nurses to do something totally different because there is this shiny new technology, it's not going to happen. You have to put a lot of work into understanding how that workplace operates and how to fit into it. Another very recent example has been work on understanding mental health during the pandemic. So these researchers used online sentiment analysis, primarily focused on Reddit and geography specific. So they trained a model to basically recognize, not in a diagnostic way, but to recognize markers of, I don't want to use a clinical term, but depressive thoughts, let's say. And they were able to use this just about in real time to understand the general public sentiments during the pandemic. So basically, you know, how worried are people at any given time? And that's not information that we can usually get. I mean, no one is just going out and surveying people to say, how are you feeling today, and publishing that. I mean, this is getting that sort of insights into what a community is feeling. You can imagine that being valuable not just in a pandemic, but you know, also are there communities? We have a lot of issues in Canada with unfortunately suicides in rural and remote communities, particularly Indigenous communities. And while this is not work that they're doing, you know, one can imagine that there can be, you know, early warning signs that there are particular communities that may be at greater risk of you know, suicides and need some interventions. And doing that not in a 3-year survey-based time frame, but doing it in, you know, a 3-day time frame. And then finally, the last example that I wanted to highlight is honestly probably the most interesting and exciting thing that I've ever been a part of in my career. CIFAR helps support, I've just listed some of the Canadian participants here, but you know, Indigenous community spanning half the globe. So North American, Indigenous, Australian, Maori from New Zealand. And really this was about exploring how could AI be made using some of the philosophy and knowledge from Indigenous ways of thought. And I think what's really exciting about, and then there was also a technical component around language preservation, you know, machine translation, things like that. But I think what's really exciting about this is the concept that, you know, there may be different approaches how we build these things and what are the values that we build into them. There's opportunities for more autonomous indigenous communities and being involved in building their own technology. So I think this is a really exciting area and something that is a huge opportunity, both in terms of a social good, but also new ways of approaching the science of artificial intelligence. And I think that's something that's incredibly exciting. So what's Canada doing now? Where are we going? So in 2021, the government of Canada recognized the success that we have seen already through the 2017 Pan-Canadian AI strategy, and is really doubling down on that and ensuring that Canada continues to be and grows as a worldwide center of AI. So there's a continuation of a lot of the programming that I discussed earlier. But now you'll see that obviously the investment has gone up substantially from 125 million to 443 million, and now includes new investments in commercialization. So now we're starting to see those specific supports, the development and adoption of AI standards. And I think that's a real opportunity for not just Canada, but a number of countries. I think there's a lot of perhaps impetus in the standards community for the US to not be the driver of that. And then also ensuring that there's compute infrastructure. So we are continuing to go on the AI adventure as a country, and we're always looking to, and I say we in the Canadian sense, as I mentioned before, we are population-wise a small country, so international collaboration is a huge part of the way that we work. And again, I would be remiss if I did not say a quick thank you to the governments of Canada, Quebec, and Alberta for supporting CIFAR's AI work, as well as a number of foundations and the French and UK governments as well. So with that, I think I kind of hit time. There's my email address. Absolutely reach out to me if you have any questions. You can find me easily on LinkedIn as well. And if we do have any audience questions, I am happy to take those.
Thank you, Brent, and thanks for your offering.
Also water.
Yes, it's time to take a sip. Thanks for offering in being available for us. I have a few questions here, Brent. One is, you mentioned the steps for successful AI strategy, and you touched briefly starting with research and retaining talent. Could you elaborate more on this? Because as we are in the process of developing our own strategy, I'm curious about the steps using the experience from Canada. I think would also be interesting to have an idea of the timeline that it took this discussion, engaging the society and all of this. So this would give us a perspective of what we have to go through.
Yeah, so I think that the focus on talent and recruiting and retaining, I don't think that that's a one-size-fits-all national approach. The reason that Canada sort of took that was because we looked at the fact that we already had great talent. We knew we had Canadian researchers that had left. We knew that that was a very valuable resource. So that's really what we looked to capitalize on. So it wasn't in any way to say that that is the way that every country should be approaching advancing their AI community. It's because I think Canada had a kind of particular advantage that we could capitalize on in that area. If I was designing something for the US or the UK, it would be a totally different approach because they have different assets that they're building on. So I think one of the important things is to have sort of that really honest look at, okay, as a country, what are we trying to accomplish and what do we have, and target things to that. We were in a kind of interesting spot. It actually came together very, very quickly. So it was very much an effort that was kind of driven by Canada's a much smaller country, so there's also that, right? But it was very much driven by kind of this core centers of AI excellence, working with CIFAR, working with a number of Canadian businesses, civil society, but it happened very, very quickly. It was start to finish less than a year.
Yeah, it's interesting because the skills are an issue, and today it's not something that happens only in Brazil. The demand for technical areas like machine learning, specialties, data science far exceed what we've been able to create. And to make the problem worse, with the real evaluation and with the possibility to work remotely, a lot of people from research in Brazil are also participating in being hired by external companies. So I think it's key to invest in programs that can help build a much higher number of people trained on this field than we have today.
Yeah, and I think it's not quite happening quite yet, but I do think we're going to see a world where it's less about competing. I mean, obviously the top research talent is always going to be really important, but it's going to be who's really building the pipelines effectively that are the people that are, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but are kind of technicians and are going in and, yep, we can build this out in your medium-sized business, because that's where the big economic gains are.
Yeah, and two of the axes from our strategy are focused on this topic. One is kind of broader than that because includes what they call digital literacy. Mm-hmm. That is not only artificial intelligence, but and this being included in all the professions, not only technical professions, but how every profession is going to be transformed by AI. And there is an actual focus on reskilling the people for the new markets that are going to come and for all the transformation that AI is going to drive. I assume probably there is a reskilling component in the Canadian strategy as well.
Yeah, it doesn't show up in our AI strategy. It shows up in some other both federal government and then provincial government initiatives. The other trend that I think is going to be interesting here is, as the bar gets lower to be able to do sort of, let's say, basic AI things, and you're starting to see more, development platforms that give you, you don't have to create your own computer vision system. Like you can just, you use a component, and I'm not a developer, so I'll probably get the terms wrong, but effectively, Microsoft Azure has a computer vision component. So that's getting more and more democratized. And I guess the other thing is, and we don't work in this area, but one of the challenges that we occasionally hear about is, people with great technical talent, but they don't understand the business component. So getting those people who get both, I mean, that's a real valuable kind of person.
Yeah, the APIs from the major players really help democratize AI. In many cases, you can just retrain this and benefit from the API. So this is important. I have another question here. You mentioned about precision agriculture, and you're probably familiar. Brazil is one of the major producers, not only of some grains like soy, beans, orange, animal protein, and agriculture is a big thing for the company. One of the things we are trying to do is to create an index that shows the utilization of technology, not only artificial intelligence, but technology in general. Artificial intelligence is very present in agriculture in general. Have you seen any index worldwide? Because we've looked for that. And one of the things that we have to develop in the strategy is try to come up with some index that would help compare utilization of technology across different parts of the globe for different sectors. Using agriculture is different than using medicine, there's different. So have you seen any of this or anyone that were able to come up with some of this index that we probably could take a look to inspire?
there's definitely nothing that I know of that's agriculture specific. I mean, I think that's a really great idea, and I mean, it's something that I'm sure a lot of Canada would have a strong interest in. I mean, Canada and Brazil have more in common than people often realize. You know, great agriculture, great mining. Um, you know, there might be nothing, and it's not coming exactly to the top of my head. There's, you know, there may be adaptable things in other industries, but I mean, I think that being able to actually, you know, track and compare that in the agricultural sphere, I mean, that seems like really fantastic work.
Okay, maybe we can get together and we can explain what we are trying to do. We mapped the different utilizations of AI in these fields, and now we are trying to develop a kind of a score. And we found that even on agriculture, it's different depending on what you are talking about. So, I was interested if there was something that was already developed that we could
Yeah.
that we could base. I
But it would
have
be, you know, really interesting because I mean, I guess you would get at, you know, how automatable is, you know, one crop versus another, you know, how
yeah,
delicate are
exactly.
like berries, right? Very, very difficult to do because it's so sensitive.
What we end up finding is that even if you pick up just one vertical like agriculture, it's different depending on what you are talking about. And there is before the farm and after the farm. So there's a
Mhm.
number of considerations to having. It's showing to be much more complex than we thought originally. So we were looking if there was some inspiration. We were not able to find this Googling on it, but
No, I'll ask some colleagues, but it doesn't. I don't think there's anything.
okay, if you're able to come up and if you're interested in seeing what we are trying to develop here, will be a pleasure. And there were a few other questions here. There are some questions popping up here. Considering the position of CIFAR as a global observatory, what would be your biggest concern regarding the evolution of AI technology and its application?
Ooh, ooh,
This is a scary topic sometimes,
yeah.
but I knew this would
Um,
come up.
of course, I know, and I think I'm supposed to have an answer where I don't really answer. I think that's what I'm supposed to be trained to do. So I mean, this isn't the CFAR answer, but this would be uh, I mean, I think that the ability of algorithmic recommendation systems, whether wielded by you know, domestic corporations or bad foreign actors, um, you know, we have seen sort of a destabilizing effect in our political systems because of that. And I would actually say that that is probably the aspect of AI that keeps me up at night the most is sort of those big social effects and sowing division and um, yeah, that's the thing that I worry about the most.
It's interesting because it's very different the response from someone who is within the area and someone outside the area. The fear normally it's kind of related with
Oh, it's the
killing
Terminator.
robots, and
Yeah,
it's getting better now. I think people are more concerned with privacy issues, with ethical issues. So there was an improvement over the past few years. I think in terms of the general public awareness of the bias, the manipulation, but it's still a lot of concerns on futuristic Hollywood
mhm.
things.
I think
Uh,
we need to ban the Terminator stock art from news articles. We just need to get rid of it.
it's getting better. I think even the press is doing a much better job. We saw films on Netflix promoting the issues with bias, with manipulation. So it's getting better. There was a question here also, where are the funds coming from? It's government funds, sponsored, private sector, venture capitalists. Do you have kind
Yeah,
of
that's a great question. So the funds for the Pan Canadian AI strategy that I mentioned, that's entirely from our federal government. So that was that $125 million initial fund, and then the expanded fund. But then there is quite a bit of other funding into the community beyond that. So that's not funding that that we administer, but it is, you know, there's a lot of private sponsorship, and it's actually it's a really interesting model that we've seen with these AI institutes, is that they get sponsorships from their corporate partners. So they're not you know, they're not investing in the AI Institute. It's basically saying, we think that the work you're doing is important for our future workforce and our future competitiveness. And they get some perks that go along with it. But it's not the sort of direct, you know, immediate ROI driven thing that you would expect to see. So it's, you know, a lot of the big Canadian banks are involved in that and saying, you're producing the talent that we need right now and are going to need even more of. So we want to support what you're doing. And then in addition to that, there are more, I guess, traditional public-private partnership sort of projects where there's applied research that's associated with, you know, a particular company or something like that.
Yeah, it's good to have this approach from the private sector, not a so immediate return approach, but kind of investing longer term.
Yeah, it was quite impressive to see, I think, the private sector step up to support the community as a whole, and, you know, all of the big banks all kind of come together on this. You know, they recognize that where they compete is, you know, in products, not in terms of, you know, who can get a little knife's edge on you know, getting those graduates. You know, the bigger the pool of talent, the more it benefits all of them.
Great. There is one last question here. I think you touched in some of these points, but what you would recommend for a country in terms of strategy to be the best initial approach for enhance the usage of AI in its organization and society in a responsible way? I think you've kind of touched in some of the steps, but it's broader, this question.
Yeah, so one of the things that, so I think if you had asked me a couple of years ago, you know, what was the thing that I worried about with AI, it probably would have been a lack of diversity in how it is being developed. And we've seen a lot of movement there in terms of having, you know, many more women involved in AI. Minority communities in Canada, much more involved in AI. So, you know, I think one of the starting points, if you're looking to implement a, you know, system that is going to be ethically responsible, is to make sure that the team that is involved, you know, represents a broad, diverse swath of the population, because you know, I've got my own blind spots that I won't see. You know, Marco, you've got your own blind spots that you won't see. Everybody does, and the more perspectives we can bring to bear on something, the less likely we are to have those problems. So that's, you know, that's one of those very upstream things. And then the other one I would point to that's, you know, it's not very sexy, but having, you know, good, you know, kind of an ethics review gate in your product development process. You know, the same way that you're going to have, you know, a privacy review gate, you're going to have, you know, a security. You know, one of the things that I would really commend Microsoft on was they put that ethics review gate into product development pretty early on. So I don't know, those are maybe two practical things I can offer on the micro level.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And some of them are challenging, like the diversity.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not pretending these are easy.
The problem starts way before, because in the technical areas, we have, unfortunately, very little participation of women in general. A lot of white males, unfortunately, and it's one of the challenges. They have to start from the
and we all have beards.
Yeah. Well, at least here. One last comment. It's not exactly a question, but you mentioned the tools, and I'm glad we are basing our strategy many of these tools. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, since we are not the pioneers here. but we've seen the Montreal Declaration. We are following the work on the Global Partnership on AI, on GPI, OECD. So these are all references that you're using here. But there was one specific point that you mentioned that we may get in contact later. There was the Canadian government assess tools. And
Yes.
one specific axle of our strategy is the use of AI by the government. There is some specific challenge when I talk about the use of the technology by the government. So if I may contact you, this is a topic that probably may be helpful for this axle of our strategy.
Yes, I am happy to talk about the algorithmic impact assessment at length, both how it was developed, which was it was done completely in the open, which was very exciting for and novel for the Canadian government, and then also how it works and how it's implemented. I think it's a really elegant solution that they've developed, and I think more people should steal it.
Great, Brent. It was a pleasure to have you here. I hope this is the first of other conversations that we have. I think there is a lot we can probably cooperate and learn from Canada. Actually, I have been working with the Canadian Embassy, and we've developed a program together to help Brazilians and Brazilian companies to get access of these assets in Canada. So it's good to see. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for being with us.
Hope Thanks. I had a blast.
We can work together.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you so much. I'm gonna share my screen again here. We continue the AI experience. So let me share the screen. Just some final comments before we get into the drawing results here. I think people may be anxious to find who won the prize, who won the prize today. The event continues tomorrow. So we have a presentation tomorrow morning from Fabrício Machado from Prevent Senior at 8 a.m. And then we are going to have a startup pitch in English starting at, no, we have an interview before, an interview with Kizzy Terra in English at 1 p.m. tomorrow. And then we have 3 startup pitches for tomorrow from 1:30 to 2. And then we are going to have Aine Schmucker from Mercedes-Benz, the data strategy lead, finalizing the afternoon modulo. And then at the end tomorrow, we're going to have Cara Malicia from public sector growth and strategy lead at Blue Dot. So the event continues tomorrow. Again, 3 blocks in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Similar format that we have today. And we have here the moment we've been waiting for. Let's see who won the prize today. We have some suspense here. The winner for today is Jonathan Vinicius Kaiser. So Jonathan won the prize today. He's going to get the prize from Semantics, the backpack, the hat. So Jonathan, congratulations for winning the prize. I think this closes our session for today. It was a pleasure to have you throughout the day and to have you here tonight. Hope to see you again tomorrow, 8 a.m. Thank you. Thank you very much.